So, there I was, minding my own business on a Thursday evening, just trying to unwind after a long day at work. My wife, Emma, had been acting strange lately, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. We'd been married for 5 years, and while I thought we had a good thing going, the past few months had been different. She was more distant, always glued to her phone, and had started working late a lot more often. Just as I was about to pour myself a drink, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Normally, I let it go to voicemail, but something compelled me to answer. "Hello?" I said. "Is this John?" A woman-S voice asked, sounding both nervous and urgent. "Yeah, who S this? It S Lisa. Emma S friend. We need to talk. Can you meet me at the corner cafe in an hour?" My heart skipped a beat. Lisa and Emma were close, but I'd never gotten a call from her before. The tone of her voice suggested something serious. I knew I couldn't ignore it. "I'll be there," I replied and hung up. I had a bad feeling about this. If Lisa wanted to meet, it couldn't be good. I quickly threw on a jacket, grabbed my keys, and headed out. But as I walked to my car, I had a thought. What if this was a setup? If Emma was cheating, maybe they'd try to confront me, or worse, trap me somehow. Instead of driving straight to the cafe, I parked my car a few blocks away in an alley behind a small bakery. I took a deep breath, reached into the glove compartment, and pulled out the gun I kept there for protection. I checked the chamber loaded. I slipped it into my waistband, hidden under my jacket. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I wasn't taking any chances. I walked the rest of the way to the cafe, trying to calm my racing thoughts. As I approached, I saw Lisa sitting alone at a table by the window, nervously tapping her fingers on the tabletop. I paused outside, gathering my composure before stepping in. "John," she greeted me as I sat down. Her eyes were wide and she looked genuinely scared. "Lisa, what is going on? Why did you call me?" She took a deep breath. "John, there's no easy way to say this, but you need to know. Emma, she's been seeing someone else. I couldn't keep it a secret any longer. She's been lying to you, meeting him behind your back." My worst fears were confirmed, and a wave of anger and betrayal washed over me. "Who is he?" I demanded, my voice low but intense. Lisa hesitated, then said, "His name is David. They've been meeting at a motel downtown." I clenched my fists under the table. This was it, the confirmation I needed. But now, it was time to plan my next move. "Thank you for telling me, Lisa," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to handle this." She nodded, looking relieved to have unburdened herself. "I am so sorry, John. I just couldn't keep lying for her." I stood up, my mind already racing with what I needed to do next. "I'll take it from here." As I left the cafe, the cool night air hit my face, and I felt a strange calmness wash over me. The truth was out, and now it was time to confront it head on. I walked back to my car, the weight of the gun heavy against my side, knowing that this night was far from over. Driving back home, I felt a storm of emotions swirling inside me: anger, betrayal, and a cold determination to get to the bottom of this. I couldn't believe Emma had done this to us, to me, but I needed a clear head to figure out my next steps. When I got home, Emma wasn't there yet. She had told me she'd be working late again, which I now knew was a lie. I poured myself that drink I had been thinking about earlier, but instead of drowning my sorrows, I sipped it slowly, my mind working overtime. Lisa had given me enough to act on. This David guy, their meetups at the motel, it was all I needed to catch them red-handed. But I wasn't about to storm in unprepared. No, I needed to do this right. I needed proof, something undeniable that I could confront Emma with and make her face the reality of her actions. I grabbed my laptop and started searching. It didn't take long to find the motel she was talking about. It was one of those cheap places downtown, the kind of place you go to if you don't want to be seen. I checked the map and noted its location, figuring out the best approach. After finishing my drink, I packed a small bag with essentials: my phone, a charger, some cash, and, of course, my gun. I hoped I wouldn't have to use it, but it was better to be prepared. I also grabbed a small digital camera I kept for work. It would come in handy for documenting whatever I found. I waited until it was late, around 11 p.m., before heading out. The drive to the motel was uneventful, giving me too much time to think. I replayed every conversation, every moment with Emma over the past few months, searching for signs I had missed. How had I been so blind? When I arrived at the motel, I parked a few blocks away again, not wanting to attract attention. I walked the rest of the way, sticking to the shadows. The place looked as seedy as I imagined, with flickering neon lights and a run-down exterior. Perfect for an affair. I found a vantage point across the street, where I could see the entrance and the parking lot clearly. I settled in, waiting for Emma's car to show up. The minutes dragged by, each one feeling like an eternity. I kept glancing at my watch, my nerves on edge. Then, just past midnight, I saw it. Emma's car pulled into the lot, and she parked near one of the rooms. My heart pounded as I watched her get out and head towards a room at the far end. She knocked lightly, and a moment later, a man opened the door. David, I assumed. They exchanged a quick kiss before slipping inside. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This was it. I crossed the street, moving quietly, my camera ready. I crept along the row of rooms until I reached theirs. The curtains were drawn, but there was a small gap, just enough for me to see inside. What I saw made my blood boil. Emma was wrapped around David, their bodies pressed together as they kissed passionately. I snapped a few pictures, each click of the camera feeling like a hammer blow to my heart. I couldn't watch anymore, but I had what I needed. I stepped back, my mind racing with what to do next. Confront them now? Wait until she got home? I decided on the latter. I wanted her to come home, to face me with her lies and deceit fresh in her mind. I walked back to my car, the anger simmering just below the surface. I drove home in a daze. The images of Emma and David burned into my mind. When I got back, I sat in the dark living room waiting. The minutes ticked by, and finally, around 2 a.m., I heard the garage door open. Emma walked in, looking tired but content. She didn't see me at first, so I spoke up, my voice cold and steady. "Had a good night, Emma?" She jumped, startled. "John, you scared me. What are you doing up?" "Waiting for you," I said, standing up. "We need to talk." She looked confused, but I could see the flicker of fear in her eyes. "About what?" I held up the camera. "About this." Her face went pale as she realized what I had. The game was up, and now it was time for answers. The shock on Emma's face was palpable as she stared at the camera in my hand. For a moment, she was speechless, her eyes wide and her mouth slightly open. The reality of her betrayal hung heavy in the air between us. "John, I can explain," she started, but I cut her off. "Explain what, Emma? That you've been lying to me for months? That you've been sneaking around with David behind my back?" My voice was cold, and I could feel my hands trembling slightly with anger. Tears welled up in her eyes. "It's not what you think." I laughed bitterly. "Not what I think? I saw you, Emma. I followed you to that motel. I watched you kiss him. I took pictures." I tossed the camera onto the coffee table, letting her see the damning evidence for herself. She glanced at the camera and then back at me, her expression a mix of guilt and desperation. "John, please. I didn't mean for this to happen. It just did." "You didn't mean for it to happen?" I echoed, incredulous. "You think that makes it better? You think that excuses months of lying and deceit?" She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I'm sorry, John. I really am. I never wanted to hurt you." "Well, you did," I said, pacing the room. "You've destroyed everything we had. How could you do this to me, to us?" She looked up, her face streaked with tears. "I don't know. I felt lost, unhappy. And David was there. He made me feel wanted, alive. I know it was wrong, but I couldn't stop." The pain in her voice tugged at something deep inside me, but I couldn't let it soften my resolve. "So what now, Emma? What do you expect me to do? Pretend this never happened?" She shook her head. "No, I know I've ruined everything. But I love you, John. I don't want to lose you." I stopped pacing and faced her, my heart heavy with the weight of her words. "Love? You say you love me, but you've been sleeping with another man. How can I believe anything you say?" Emma stood up and took a step towards me, her hands reaching out. "Please, John, give me a chance to make things right. I'll end it with David. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." I stared at her, the woman I had once loved more than anything, now a stranger to me. Could I ever forgive her? Could we ever rebuild what she had shattered? "I don't know if that is possible," I said quietly, the anger in my voice giving way to a deep, aching sadness. "You've broken something that might never be fixed." She dropped her hands, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "I understand, but please, just give me a chance. Let's try to work through this, for us." For a long moment, we stood there in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I had loved Emma with all my heart, and the thought of losing her was unbearable. But the trust was gone, replaced by a chasm of betrayal. Finally, I nodded, more out of exhaustion than anything else. "All right, one chance, Emma. But know this, if you ever lie to me again, if you ever see David or any other man behind my back, it's over. Do you understand?" She nodded vigorously, relief flooding her features. "Thank you, John. I promise I'll make this right." I sighed, feeling the enormity of what lay ahead. "We'll see, but right now I need some space. I'm going to stay at a hotel for a few days. I need time to think." Emma looked stricken, but she didn't protest. "Okay, take all the time you need. I'll be here, waiting." I packed a bag and left the house, my heart heavy with a mix of anger, hurt, and a glimmer of hope. As I drove to the hotel, I couldn't help but wonder if giving Emma another chance was the right decision. Only time would tell if our love was strong enough to survive this betrayal. The hotel room was quiet, almost eerily so compared to the chaos swirling in my mind. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the past few hours. Emma's tear-streaked face, her desperate pleas for another chance, they were all etched into my memory. But so was the image of her with David, the betrayal that had cut so deeply. Sleep didn't come easily that night. My thoughts were a tangled mess of anger, sadness, and confusion. I had told Emma I needed time to think, but the truth was, I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to believe her, to believe that she could change and that we could rebuild our life together. But another part of me, the part still reeling from the betrayal, wasn't so sure. The next morning, I woke up feeling groggy and unrested. I decided to take a walk, hoping the fresh air would clear my mind. As I walked through the city streets, I found myself thinking about Lisa. She had been the one to tell me about Emma's affair, but I had so many questions. How long had she known? Why had she decided to tell me now? And what did she expect me to do with this information? I pulled out my phone and called her. She answered on the second ring. "John, are you okay?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. I'm not sure," I admitted. "I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" "Of course." "How about the same cafe as last night?" "Okay, I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I arrived at the cafe, Lisa was already there, sitting at a corner table. She looked up and smiled weakly as I approached. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, sitting down across from her. "Of course. How are you holding up?" I shrugged. "I don't know. I talked to Emma last night, confronted her about everything." Lisa's eyes widened. "How did that go?" I told her about the confrontation, about Emma's pleas for another chance. Lisa listened quietly, nodding occasionally. "So, what are you going to do?" she asked when I finished. "That's the thing. I don't know. Part of me wants to believe her, but part of me doesn't know if I can ever trust her again." Lisa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I understand. It's a lot to process. But you deserve to know the truth, all of it." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She glanced around as if checking to make sure no one was listening, then leaned in closer. "There's more to this, John. Emma's been lying to you about a lot of things. David, he's not just some random guy. He is someone she's been seeing for a long time." My heart sank. "How long?" Lisa hesitated. "Almost a year. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. A year. And you've known this whole time?" She shook her head. "No. I only found out a few months ago. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't keep lying for her." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Why did you tell me now?" "Because I couldn't stand seeing you in the dark any longer. You deserve better, John. You deserve the truth." Her words hit me hard. I did deserve the truth. And if Emma had been lying to me for a year, then maybe there was no hope for us after all. "I need to confront David," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. Lisa looked worried. "John, be careful. David is not a good guy. He's dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "He has a history. Violence, trouble with the law. Emma got mixed up with him and now she was in deeper than she realizes." I felt a surge of anger. "Then I need to put an end to this, once and for all." Lisa nodded, but her eyes were filled with concern. "Just promise me you will be careful. I don't want you to get hurt." "I will," I said, standing up. "Thank you, Lisa, for everything." She nodded again, and I left the cafe, my mind made up. It was time to confront David and get to the bottom of this once and for all. But I knew I couldn't do it alone. I needed a plan. Back at the hotel, I pulled out my laptop and started researching David. It didn't take long to find information on him, his arrest records, his known associates, even the places he frequented. The more I read, the more I realized just how dangerous he was. I decided to set up a meeting with him. I sent him a message, pretending to be Emma, asking him to meet at a secluded spot near the old train station. It was risky, but I needed to catch him off guard. I parked my car a few blocks away and walked to the meeting spot, making sure to stay out of sight. As I waited, I felt the weight of the gun against my side. I hoped I wouldn't have to use it, but I was ready for anything. David arrived right on time, looking around nervously. He was a tall, muscular guy with a menacing aura. I watched him for a moment, then stepped out of the shadows. "David," I called out. He turned, his eyes narrowing when he saw me. "Who the hell are you?" "I am John, Emma's husband." His expression changed from surprise to anger. "What do you want? I want you to stay away from my wife." He smirked. "Or what? Or I'll make sure you regret it." David took a step towards me, his fists clenched. "You think you can threaten me? You have no idea who you are messing with." I pulled out the gun, keeping it aimed at the ground but ready to use. "I don't want any trouble, David. Just stay away from Emma." He laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "You are a fool, John. Emma is not coming back to you. She is mine now." His words hit me hard, but I didn't waver. "This is your last warning. Stay away from her or else." David's expression turned deadly, and for a moment I thought he might attack. But then he took a step back, his eyes still locked on mine. "You're going to regret this, John," he said, his voice low and threatening. "You have no idea what you've started." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there with my heart pounding in my chest. I watched him go, knowing that this was far from over. But I had made my stand, and now it was time to see if Emma could truly change. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get a lot more complicated. But whatever happened next, I was ready. I had to be. For my sake and for Emma's. Back at the hotel, I tried to process everything. The confrontation with David had left me on edge, but it had also given me a sense of purpose. I had warned him, and now it was time to see if he would heed that warning. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. David wouldn't back down that easily. I called Emma, needing to hear her voice and understand what was happening on her end. The phone rang a few times before she picked up. "John?" she answered, her voice shaky. "It is me. We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my tone calm but firm. "Okay, can you come home? We can talk here," she pleaded. I hesitated. Going back home felt like walking into a minefield, but I needed answers, and we couldn't keep running away from this. "Fine. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The drive felt longer than it actually was, every minute stretched by the weight of what awaited me. When I pulled into the driveway, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. Emma was waiting in the living room, looking anxious and worn. The sight of her tugged at my heart, but I couldn't let it distract me. "John?" she said softly as I walked in. "Emma," I replied, closing the door behind me. "We need to clear the air. No more lies, no more half-truths. I want everything out in the open." She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I know. I'm ready." We sat down on the couch and I let her begin. "I'm so sorry for everything," she started, her voice trembling. "I never meant for things to get this far. David was. He was a mistake, a huge mistake. It started off innocent, just someone to talk to, but then it escalated, and I didn't know how to stop. How long has this been going on, Emma? I asked, needing to hear her say it. Almost a year, she admitted, her head hanging low. I tried to end it several times, but he wouldn't let me. He has this hold over me, John. He's dangerous. I know, I said. I've looked into him, and I confronted him. Her eyes widened in shock. You what? I met him. Told him to stay away from you. John, you shouldn't have done that. He's not someone you can reason with. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I had to do something, Emma. I couldn't just sit back and let this continue. She reached out, grabbing my hand. I want to make things right. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll go to the police, tell them everything. I'll get a restraining order if I have to. I looked into her eyes, searching for any sign of deception, but all I saw was desperation and regret. All right, we'll do this together, but you need to be honest with me from now on. No more secrets. I promise, she said, tears streaming down her face. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. Over the next few days, we began the difficult process of rebuilding. Emma went to the police and filed a report against David, detailing his threats and their affair. She also applied for a restraining order, hoping it would keep him at bay. The police took her seriously, given David's history, and assured us they would keep an eye on him. But the nights were the hardest. Lying in bed, the silence between us was deafening. I wanted to reach out, to hold her and tell her everything would be all right, but the pain was still too fresh. Instead, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if things would ever truly be okay again. One evening, just as I was starting to drift off, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from an unknown number, but the message sent a chill down my spine. You think a piece of paper can stop me? You have no idea what is coming. D. I sat up, my heart racing. Emma stirred beside me. What is wrong? I showed her the text. Her face went pale. Oh my God, he's not going to stop, is he? We'll deal with this, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. We'll go back to the police tomorrow. They need to know about this. The next morning, we did just that. The police took the threat seriously and promised to increase patrols around our neighborhood. They also suggested we consider staying somewhere else for a while, just to be safe. But I couldn't run forever. I had to face this head on. And I had a feeling that the only way to truly end this was to dig deeper into David's past and find something that could stop him for good. I reached out to a private investigator, someone who could get me the information I needed. Within a few days, I had a detailed report on David. It was worse than I had imagined. He had a long history of violence, manipulation, and even connections to organized crime. Armed with this new information, I went back to the police, hoping it would be enough to get them to act more aggressively. They assured me they were doing everything they could, but it felt like a waiting game. Then, one night, things took a turn for the worse. We were sitting in the living room trying to watch a movie and forget about our troubles when there was a loud crash from the back of the house. Emma and I jumped up, my heart pounding. Stay here, I whispered to her, grabbing the gun I had kept nearby since all this started. I moved quietly towards the back of the house, my senses on high alert. As I approached the kitchen, I saw a figure trying to climb in through the shattered window. It was David. Stop right there! I shouted, aiming the gun at him. He froze, his eyes wild with anger. You think you can scare me with that? I'll shoot if I have to. Get out of my house! David laughed, a chilling sound that sent a shiver down my spine. You don't have the guts. Just then I heard sirens in the distance, growing louder. David must have heard them too because he cursed under his breath and backed away from the window. This isn't over, John, he spat, disappearing into the night. The police arrived moments later, taking our statements and promising to do everything they could to find him. But I knew David wouldn't give up easily. He was like a cornered animal, dangerous and unpredictable. As we sat in the living room, the adrenaline slowly wearing off, I realized just how far this had gone. We couldn't keep living in fear, waiting for the next attack. We needed a plan, something to end this once and for all. And as I held Emma close, Feeling her tremble against me, I knew that whatever it took, I would protect her. David had pushed us to the brink, but I wasn't going to let him win. Tomorrow, I would put the final part of my plan into motion. It was time to take back control and make sure David could never hurt us again. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of determination. The attack on our home had left us both shaken, but it also fueled my resolve. David had crossed a line, and it was time to end this. I called the private investigator and filled him in on what had happened. "I need your help," I said. "We need to set a trap for David, something that will get him caught red-handed and put away for good." The PI, a seasoned pro named Mike, didn't hesitate. "I am on it. We all need to be careful, though. This guy sounds dangerous." We spent the next few hours devising a plan. It involved using Emma as bait, something that made my stomach churn, but it was the only way. We needed to lure David into a situation where he would incriminate himself. Emma was understandably nervous about the plan, but she agreed. "I just want this to be over," she said. "If this is what it takes, I'll do it." That evening, we set the wheels in motion. Emma texted David from a burner phone, pretending to be desperate and scared. She told him that she needed to see him, that she was ready to leave me for good. The message was simple but effective. David's response came quickly. "Meet me at the old warehouse on 5th Street. Midnight. Come alone." I called Mike and relayed the details. "We'll have a team in place," he assured me. "But you need to be prepared for anything." David wanted to go down without a fight. As midnight approached, Emma and I drove to the designated location, my heart pounding in my chest. We parked a few blocks away and met up with Mike and his team, who were already in position. They had set up hidden cameras around the warehouse and had officers ready to move in at a moment's notice. "Remember, the key is to get him to admit to everything," Mike said. "We need him to confess on tape." Emma nodded, her face pale but determined. "I can do this." We watched as she walked towards the warehouse, my stomach in knots. I hated putting her in danger, but it was the only way to end this nightmare. From our vantage point, we could see her enter the building. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit, shadows dancing across the walls. Emma stood in the center, her heart racing as she waited for David. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of her own breathing. Suddenly the door creaked open, and David stepped inside. He looked around, his eyes narrowing when he saw Emma. "You came," he said, a twisted smile on his face. "I knew you would." Emma took a deep breath. "David, this has to stop. John knows everything. He's not going to let this go." David's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold determination. "I am not afraid of John. He can touch me. Please, David, just leave us alone. I don't want anyone to get hurt." He took a step closer, his eyes glinting with malice. "You don't get it, do you? You belong to me now. You made your choice." Emma stood her ground, her voice trembling but strong. "I made a mistake, David. I want out." He laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "It's too late for that. You are mine, Emma. And if John gets in the way, I'll deal with him. Deal with him? How?" David's eyes darkened. "Let's just say I've got ways of making people disappear. If John tries anything, he'll regret it." That was the cue. The hidden cameras had captured everything. Mike and his team moved in, bursting through the doors with guns drawn. "Freeze! Police!" Mike shouted. David spun around, his face contorted with rage. "You set me up!" Emma backed away, tears streaming down her face. "It's over, David. You are finished." David reached for his pocket, but the officers were faster. They tackled him to the ground, cuffing him as he struggled and cursed. I rushed in, my heart pounding with relief as I wrapped my arms around Emma. "It's okay. It's over." She clung to me, sobbing with a mixture of fear and relief. "Thank you, John. I couldn't have done this without you." David was taken away, still shouting threats and obscenities. The police had all the evidence they needed to put him away for a long time. But even as he was led out in handcuffs, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't truly over. In the days that followed, Emma and I tried to pick up the pieces of our lives. We went through counseling, trying to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. It wasn't easy, and there were days when I wondered if we would ever fully recover. But we were committed to trying. Emma had made a mistake, but she was determined to make things right. and I was willing to give her that chance. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emma took my hand. I know it's going to take time, but I want you to know that I love you, John, more than anything. I squeezed her hand, feeling a glimmer of hope. I love you too, Emma. We'll get through this, together. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like we had a fighting chance. David was behind bars, and we were finally free to focus on healing. But even as we moved forward, I knew that the scars of the past would never fully fade. They were a reminder of the pain we had endured, but also of the strength we had found in each other. And as we sat there, hand in hand, I realized that sometimes love wasn't about perfection. It was about fighting for what mattered, even when things seemed impossible. And that was a battle I was willing to fight every day for the rest of our lives. The weeks that followed were a mix of tentative peace and lingering tension. Emma and I were doing our best to rebuild our relationship, but the trust between us was still fragile. We went to counseling sessions together, trying to work through the hurt and betrayal, and slowly we began to find our way back to each other. David's arrest had given us some breathing room. With him behind bars, we no longer had to look over our shoulders constantly. The police assured us that he would face serious charges, and it looked like he would be out of our lives for good. Still, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that the calm we were experiencing was just the eye of the storm. One evening, after another exhausting counseling session, Emma and I decided to go for a walk. The autumn air was crisp, and the leaves crunched under our feet as we strolled through the neighborhood. It felt good to be outside, away from the house that held so many painful memories. "I've been thinking," Emma said, breaking the silence. "Maybe we should move, start fresh somewhere new." I looked at her, considering the idea. A fresh start sounds good, but we can run away from our problems, Emma. We have to face them. She nodded, her eyes reflecting a mixture of determination and uncertainty. "I know. I want to put all this behind us. I want to be happy again." "We will be," I said, squeezing her hand. "It'll take time, but we'll get there." As we walked, I couldn't help but think about the future. What would it look like? Could we really move past this and find happiness again? I wanted to believe we could, but the doubts lingered, whispering in the back of my mind. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing. It was a text from Mike, the private investigator. "Need to talk. Urgent." My heart skipped a beat. I got dressed quickly and called him back, stepping outside to avoid waking Emma. "Mike, what is going on?" I asked as soon as he answered. "We've got a problem," he said, his voice tense. "David made bail." I felt a cold knot of fear in my stomach. "What? How?" His lawyer pulled some strings, argued that he wasn't a flight risk. Judge granted it. "This can't be happening," I muttered, running a hand through my hair. "What do we do? First, you need to be careful. He is out there, and he is probably not happy. Second, we're going to increase surveillance. Make sure he's not coming anywhere near you or Emma." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Okay. Thanks, Mike. Stay safe, John. I'll keep you updated." I hung up and went back inside, my mind racing. How was I going to tell Emma? She had just started to feel safe again, and now this. Emma was in the kitchen, making breakfast when I walked in. She looked up and smiled, but her smile faded when she saw my expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, concern etched on her face. I took her hand and led her to the living room. "We need to talk." She sat down, her eyes wide with worry. "John, you're scaring me." I sat next to her, taking a deep breath. David made bail. He's out. Emma's face went pale. "No. How?" "I thought he was going to be in jail for a long time. His lawyer got him out, but Mike and the police are on it. They'll make sure he stays away from us." She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "What if he comes after us? What if he tries to hurt you?" "I want to let that happen," I said, wrapping my arms around her. "We'll be careful. We'll get through this." As the days went by, we did our best to carry on with our lives, but the fear was always there, lurking in the background. We took precautions, changing our routines, avoiding places where we might run into David, and keeping in close contact with Mike and the police. One evening, as we were having dinner, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Mike. "Need you to come to the office. Have some information you need to see." I showed the message to Emma. "I'm going to see Mike. He says it's important." She nodded, her eyes filled with worry. "Be careful, John." "I will," I promised, kissing her forehead. "I'll be back soon." The drive to Mike S. office felt longer than usual. My mind was filled with all the possible scenarios, each one more unsettling than the last. When I arrived, Mike was waiting for me, a grim look on his face. "John, thanks for coming," he said, leading me into his office. "What's going on, Mike? What did you find?" He handed me a folder. "We've been monitoring David S. movement since he got out. We found something you need to see." I opened the folder and felt a chill run down my spine. There were photos of David meeting with some shady-looking individuals, and several phone records indicating he had been making calls to known associates with criminal backgrounds. "He planning something," Mike said. "We don't know what yet, but it is clear he is not giving up." I stared at the photos, a mix of fear and anger boiling inside me. What do we do? We keep monitoring him. The police are on high alert, but you need to be extra careful. Don T, let your guard down, not even for a second. I nodded, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "Thanks, Mike. I appreciate everything you are doing." "Just doing my job," he said. "But I care about you and Emma. We'll get through this." As I drove back home, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me. David was out there plotting something, and we were caught in the middle of it. When I walked in the door, Emma was waiting, her face etched with worry. What did Mike say? I sat down next to her, holding her close. "David is up to something. We don't know what yet, but we need to be careful." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I am scared, John. I don't want to lose you." "You won T," I said, my voice firm. "We'll get through this, Emma, together." We held each other, finding solace in our shared strength. The storm was far from over, but we were ready to face whatever came our way. And as I sat there, holding Emma close, I realized that no matter what happened, we would fight for our future. We had come too far to let David tear us apart. This was our life, our love, and we would protect it with everything we had. The days turned into a tense waiting game. Every creak of the house, every shadow outside set my nerves on edge. Emma and I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, but it was like living in a pressure cooker, the tension mounting with each passing hour. Mike's updates were frequent. David had been spotted meeting with various shady characters around town, but nothing concrete had come up. The police were doing their best, but without a direct threat or violation of the restraining order, there wasn't much they could do. One evening, just as we were sitting down to dinner, Mike called. His tone was urgent. "John, I need you to come to the office. We've got something big." I hung up and looked at Emma. "Mike's got new information. I need to go." Emma's eyes widened with worry, but she nodded. "Be careful." I kissed her forehead. "I will. Lock the doors and don't open them for anyone." The drive to Mike's office felt like a race against time. When I arrived, he was already waiting for me, a grim look on his face. "John, we've intercepted some communications. David is planning something for tomorrow night. We don't have all the details yet, but it is serious." My heart pounded in my chest. "What do we do? We've alerted the police, and they're setting up a sting operation. But you and Emma need to be somewhere safe. I've arranged for you to stay at a secure location tonight." "Where?" Mike handed me an address. "It is a safe house outside the city. The police will be watching it. You'll be safe there." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and dread. "Okay, I'll get Emma and head there right away." Back home, Emma was packing a bag when I walked in. She looked up, her face pale but determined. "What did Mike say?" "We are going to a safe house. It's outside the city and the police will be watching it. We'll be safe there." She nodded, zipping up her bag. "Let's go." We drove in silence, the weight of the situation pressing down on us. The safe house was a small, secluded cabin surrounded by woods. As we pulled up, I saw a few unmarked police cars parked nearby, their presence reassuring. Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable. There was a living room, a small kitchen, and a bedroom. We settled in, trying to make the best of the situation. "Are we really safe here?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," I said, wrapping my arms around her. "The police are watching. We'll be okay." That night, we slept fitfully, the fear of what David might be planning hanging over us. But as dawn broke, we woke up with a renewed sense of determination. We were here, we were safe, and we would get through this. The day passed slowly. Mike called periodically with updates, but there was still no concrete information on what David was planning. As the sun began to set, the tension in the cabin became almost unbearable. Then, just as the last light of day faded, Mike called again. "John, we've got a lead. David's been spotted near your house. The police are moving in." My heart raced. "What do you need us to do?" "Stay put. The police will handle it. Just stay safe." I hung up, my hands shaking. Emma looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. "What is happening?" "David S. near our house. The police are moving in. We just need to stay here and stay safe." We sat on the couch, holding each other, waiting for news. Minutes felt like hours, the silence around us oppressive. Then the phone rang again. It was Mike. "John, they've got him. David S. in custody." Relief flooded through me. Thank God, what happened? "They caught him trying to break into your house. He had a weapon, John. He was planning to hurt you both." Emma gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God, he's in custody now," Mike continued. "He wanted to be able to hurt you anymore." I thanked Mike and hung up, pulling Emma into a tight embrace. "It is just over. He is in custody. We are safe." Tears of relief streamed down her face. "I can't believe it. We are finally safe." The next few days were a blur of police reports, statements, and court proceedings. David was charged with multiple offenses, including attempted assault and violating the restraining order. With his criminal history, it was clear he would be put away for a long time. As the dust settled, Emma and I began to rebuild our lives. We moved to a new house, far away from the memories of the past. The counseling sessions continued, helping us heal and grow stronger together. One evening, as we sat on our new porch watching the sunset, I took Emma's hand. "We made it," I said softly. She nodded, a small smile on her face. "We did. I am so grateful for you, John, for everything. I love you, Emma. More than anything, I love you too." We sat there in silence, the warmth of the setting sun wrapping around us. The storm had passed, and we were finally free to look forward to the future. The scars of the past would always be there, but they were a testament to our strength, our resilience, and our love. And as we faced the future together, I knew that no matter what came our way, we would handle it. Together. The months that followed felt like a rebirth. Emma and I had moved into our new home, a cozy place in a quiet neighborhood far from the turmoil that had once engulfed our lives. The tranquility was a welcome change, and we took solace in the simple joys of everyday life, walking through the nearby park, cooking meals together, and enjoying quiet evenings on the porch. Our counseling sessions continued, becoming a cornerstone of our healing process. Dr. Thompson, our counselor, had a way of guiding us through the most painful memories and helping us build new, healthier patterns of communication and trust. The process was slow, sometimes excruciatingly so, but it was working. We were learning to open up to each other again, to share our fears, hopes, and dreams. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Emma turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "John, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about." I looked at her, slightly concerned but open. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, her eyes reflecting a mix of hope and vulnerability. "I've been thinking about starting a family. I know it is a big step, especially after everything we have been through, but I feel like we are in a good place now. I want to build a future with you, a family." Her words took me by surprise, but as I considered them, I felt a warmth spread through my chest. The idea of starting a family, of creating a new chapter in our lives, was something I hadn't allowed myself to dream about amidst all the chaos. But now, with the storm behind us, it seemed not only possible but also profoundly right. "I love that, Emma," I said, smiling. "I think it's a wonderful idea." She beamed, the worry lines on her face softening into genuine happiness. Really? You're sure? I nodded. Absolutely. We have come so far, and I can think of a better way to celebrate that than by building our future together. From that moment on, our focus shifted to planning for our family. We visited doctors, talked about our hopes for our children, and even started setting up a nursery in one of the spare rooms. The anticipation of a new life, a new beginning, brought us even closer together. One day, as we were painting the nursery a soft shade of yellow, Emma turned to me with a mischievous smile. Remember when we first met? I laughed, dipping my brush into the paint. How could I forget? You walked into my office like a hurricane, demanding to know who had backed into your car. She giggled, her eyes sparkling with the memory. You were so flustered. I thought it was cute. Well, I was pretty smitten from the start, I admitted. Who knew a fender bender would lead to all this? Emma S.'s expression softened. I'm glad it did. Even with everything that S happened, I wouldn't trade our journey for anything. Me neither, I said, leaning in to kiss her. As the months passed, our lives settled into a comfortable routine. We made new friends in the neighborhood, hosted barbecues, and continued to support each other through the ups and downs. The threat of David felt like a distant memory, a dark chapter that had been firmly closed. One crisp autumn afternoon, as we were raking leaves in the yard, Emma suddenly stopped and put a hand on her stomach. She looked at me, her eyes wide with excitement. John, I think it is time. I dropped the rake, my heart pounding. Are you sure? She nodded, her face glowing with happiness. Yes, it is time. We grabbed the hospital bag we had prepared weeks ago and hurried to the car. The drive to the hospital felt surreal, a mix of nerves and excitement. When we arrived, the staff quickly took us to a room and the labor process began. The hours that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. I held Emma S.'s hand, offering words of encouragement as she went through the intense process of bringing our child into the world. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the doctor announced that it was time for the final push. With one last effort, Emma brought our baby into the world. The room was filled with the sound of our child's first cries, a beautiful, healthy baby boy. The nurse handed him to Emma, and we both gazed at him in awe, tears of joy streaming down our faces. He is perfect, I whispered, my heart overflowing with love. Emma smiled, her eyes shining with happiness. He really is. We named him Ethan, a name we had both loved from the start. Holding him in my arms for the first time, I felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. Our journey had been long and difficult, but it had led us to this moment, to the start of a new chapter filled with hope and promise. As the days turned into weeks, we adjusted to life as new parents. The sleepless nights and endless diaper changes were challenging, but every moment with Ethan was a gift. He brought so much joy and light into our lives, and every time I looked at him, I was reminded of the strength and resilience that had brought us here. One evening, as I rocked Ethan to sleep, Emma came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my shoulders. I love you, John, she whispered. I love you too, I said, kissing her hand. We've been through so much, but we made it. We were stronger for it. She nodded, resting her head on my shoulder. Yes, we are. And I'm so grateful for our life, for our family. As I looked at Ethan, peacefully sleeping in my arms, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Our love had been tested and forged in the fires of adversity, and it had emerged unbreakable. The future was bright, and as we stood there, holding our son, I knew that our best days were still ahead. We had survived the storm, and now it was time to enjoy the calm, to build the life we had always dreamed of, one filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. The first few months with Ethan were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and endless feedings, but every moment was worth it. The joy he brought into our lives was indescribable. Watching him grow and discover the world around him filled Emma and me with a sense of wonder and gratitude. We continued to go to our counseling sessions, now focused on maintaining the strong foundation we had built. Dr. Thompson was pleased with our progress and encouraged us to keep communicating openly and honestly. She reminded us that relationships require constant effort and attention, and we took her advice to heart. One sunny afternoon, while Emma was in the kitchen preparing lunch, I took Ethan for a walk in the park. He was fascinated by everything: the rustling leaves, the chirping birds, and the gentle breeze on his face. As we strolled along the path, I thought about how far we had come and how much we had to look forward to. When we returned home, Emma greeted us with a warm smile. "How was the walk?" she asked, taking Ethan from my arms. "It was great," I said, kissing her cheek. He loved it. As we sat down to lunch, I felt a sense of contentment settle over me. Our life had found a new rhythm, one that was centered around our love for each other and our dedication to our family. The dark days were behind us, and the future was bright. One evening, after putting Ethan to bed, Emma and I sat on the porch, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. We often spent our evenings like this, reflecting on our journey and dreaming about the future. "John," Emma said softly, "I've been thinking about something." "What is it?" I asked, turning to look at her. "I want to write a book," she said, her eyes shining with excitement, "about everything we've been through. I think it could help others who are going through similar struggles." I smiled, proud of her for wanting to turn our experiences into something positive. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Emma. Your story could inspire so many people." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I just want people to know that it's possible to overcome even the darkest times, that love and forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds." "We've certainly been through a lot," I said, wrapping my arm around her. "But we've come out stronger on the other side." Emma started working on her book, and as she wrote, we both found it to be a cathartic experience. It allowed us to reflect on our journey, to acknowledge the pain and the growth, and to celebrate the resilience that had carried us through. As the months passed, Ethan continued to grow, his curiosity and laughter filling our home with joy. We celebrated his first birthday with a small gathering of friends and family, grateful for the love and support that surrounded us. One day, as we were playing in the backyard, Ethan toddled over to Emma and me, holding out a flower he had picked. "For you, Mama," he said, his words still a little unsteady but filled with love. Emma took the flower, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart." I watched them, my heart full. This was what we had fought for, these precious moments of love and connection. Our journey had been difficult, but it had led us here, to a place of peace and happiness. A few weeks later, Emma received an email from a publisher interested in her book. They wanted to meet with her to discuss the possibility of publishing it. She was overjoyed, and I couldn't have been prouder. The meeting went well, and soon, Emma was signing a contract to publish her book. It was a dream come true, and it felt like the perfect way to close the chapter on our past and embrace the future. The day her book was released, we celebrated with a small party at home. Friends and family gathered to congratulate Emma, and as she signed copies of her book, I could see the pride and joy in her eyes. Later that night, after everyone had left and Ethan was asleep, Emma and I sat on the porch, reflecting on the journey that had brought us here. "I'm so proud of you, Emma," I said, taking her hand. "Your book is going to help so many people." She smiled, leaning into me. "I couldn't have done it without you, John. You've been my rock through everything." "We did it together," I said, kissing her forehead, "and we'll keep moving forward together." As we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, I felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. Our love had been tested and had emerged stronger than ever. We had faced our demons, healed our wounds, and built a life filled with love and promise. The future was ours to embrace, and as we looked up at the stars, I knew that whatever came our way, we would face it together. Our love, our family, and our strength would guide us through. And so, we continued our journey, hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future held. Our story was one of resilience, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love. And as we looked ahead, we knew that the best was yet to come.